we reached out to Josh Sachs. Josh came in last year with the new administration as Deputy Secretary of Natural Resources. Had an incredible workload for the last year and a half almost. And Josh comes in with incredible experience, DC, elsewhere, and all things endangered, including our climate in this world. So very excited to have Josh talk to us and give us an update on the kind of things he's working on, and appreciate you being here today.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me about Governor Northam's carbon reduction, greenhouse gas reduction strategies and initiatives, and I'm going to do that today. I may mention some other things. This seems like a small group, somewhat informal. If you have questions or thoughts, please, by all means, jump in, or I'm happy to take questions at the end, but happy to have this be a dialogue as much as you're interested. I guess first thing I should say, when it comes to carbon reduction, it is a top priority for the Northam administration, for Governor Northam. It is a top priority for the Secretary of Natural Resources. It is something we know we have to do. We are, as you all know, seeing the consequences already of a warming climate. We have launched a separate initiative around adaptation and coastal resilience. We have launched some pretty sweeping new land conservation plans that will take these things into account and help us better target. So that's all part of what we're doing. But again, the topic for today is carbon reduction. And with regard to carbon reduction in the Commonwealth, I think our approach is all hands on deck, all approaches, full speed ahead as much as we can. And I'd like to tell you today about some of those initiatives. I think when we talk about all hands on deck, all approaches type of attack, I think it's clear to all of you, but I should just state explicitly that means clean energy and renewable energy, energy efficiency, regulatory caps, incentives, and any other ideas people can help us think of. So with that, here's some of the things that we are working on in the Northam administration. First, last year the governor put out his energy plan. I'm sure, as you all know, energy plans are really documents that can show the priority of a governor. There are not a lot of rules about what has to be in an energy plan. And Governor Northam's energy plan is dedicated to clean energy, solar and onshore, wind, offshore wind, energy efficiency, things like that. I think that fact that has no major new energy from carbon emitting sources is a signal of where the governor hopes to go. And then, of course, governor's first legislative session here, 2017, the General Assembly passed Senate Bill 966, the Grid Transformation and Security Act. And in that, is Dominion in the room? Are they here? Are they on the phone?
No.
Okay, but I believe as part of that, Dominion will be spending $870 million on energy efficiency. I think that's something we're really pleased to see, and is something we consider to be a major part of the puzzle in reducing carbon emissions. Sort of a mixed bag. We got $94 million from Volkswagen settlement. It's nice to have $94 million, although all said and done, we would have rather not have had to have that money. I think you all understand that. But $94 million creates some significant opportunity to work to address emissions from the transportation sector. So far, we have dedicated about a third of that money. The first 15%, $14 million total, has gone to a company called EVgo to create a network of charging stations for cars. We're partnering with them. Within the next 3 years, there will be a high-speed charger within 30 miles of nearly every Virginian, thanks to this network. Second tranche of that money, we spent $14 million on upgrading municipal bus fleets. And now we still have a significant amount of money left. We're getting ready to make our next announcement. I can't tell you what that'll be, but I can tell you we're looking at things like ports, ferries, school buses. And if you have more ideas, come and see us. We joined something called the Transportation Climate Initiative. That is a 12-state plus DC coalition of Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states that are dedicated to reducing emissions from the transportation sector. we're starting from scratch. This is a coalition that is being staffed and guided in some respects by the Georgetown Climate Center and other experts. We do not yet have a sort of solution. I think people have thought about various ideas to create a regional trading scheme for transportation. People have talked about encouraging multimodal approaches and others. We hope that by next year, around this time next year, TCI will have created some kind of unified approach that Virginia will be bought in on and then we'll begin to implement. We also announced our intention to regulate methane, one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gases, and I think on that we have not gotten very far. We know that we're going to start with the oil and gas industry and really work to capture fugitive emissions, up and down the supply chain. We think we can get significant gains there. The Department of Environmental Quality has formed a work group already. They are meeting, trying to come up with ideas. We expect that this fall they will report out with recommendations on what a regulation will look like, and then we'll begin that process. And last but certainly not least, the big enchilada, and if you read the papers, I'm sure you've heard about this a lot lately. Governor Northam, the DEQ, and the State Air Pollution Control Board have been working on a carbon rule to cap carbon emissions from fossil fuel burning power plants and to join the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, RGGI. The Air Board has finalized and approved that regulation. That regulation was approved by the governor. It will be published in the next register, I believe, end of May. The General Assembly passed a provision in the state budget that bars Virginia from spending any money to link to, coordinate with, or engage RGGI. Governor Northam asked the General Assembly to remove that provision by amendment. That failed in the General Assembly. At the end of the day, Governor Northam considered all of this, felt like there was nothing else he could do legally, and signed the budget. That does not mean game over. Right now, we're soon one published. On the books is a rule to reduce emissions from power plants in Virginia by 30% over 10 years. That'll get us from about 28 megatons to about 19 and a half. What we need to figure out now is, what does all this mean? And we don't have any easy answers. We know that the rule applies in state. How we're going to implement it, we're unsure of. How we can join into RGGI, we are unsure of yet, but that is the ultimate goal. The rule has some self-executing language that says when the General Assembly removes the prohibitions I described a moment ago, we will automatically join into RGGI, and we will join in at the cap number associated with that year. So if we join in 2022, we don't start at the beginning of the curve, we start at where the curve is at 2022. Does that make sense to everybody? So now we really are having meetings, we're talking to legal counsel, we're trying to figure out our path forward. We hope and believe that we will be reducing carbon from coal-fired power plants during the Northam administration. I just don't have all the answers yet. With that, I think that's sort of 5 or 6 key programs or initiatives that we're working on right now that are going to get us to I shouldn't say carbon-free, but certainly a reduced carbon load for the Commonwealth, and we believe we'll be doing our part to help the United States and the global community meet its climate goals. So with that, I'm happy to have any discussion you want, answer any questions, and frankly, I hope there's a little dialogue.
I'll kick it off.
Sure.
So, appreciate you coming and sitting down with us and sharing the initiatives. It's great, good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a discussion with that we'll update everyone on later last month with
1st of April.
With Secretary Ball and Governor, because this is all great. The one thing that's missing is the mention of this Commonwealth's largest clean energy source, which is nuclear. Now, the State Corporation Commission, in their approval of Dominion's spending plan to extend the life of Surrey and North Anna is great. Having those plants to continue as part of the clean energy mix, I think, is critical for any carbon reduction goals. But one of the things we've stressed is what's happening next, because something I'll mention later to the group, but there's an announcement in Pennsylvania yesterday that 3 Mile Island is going to close, which there are impacts separate on Virginia of that, but it's 817 megawatts of carbon-free energy that will go offline in September, and there's no good plan to quickly replace that with generation that is of a similar emissions profile. And
Clean entry.
so if there's no pipeline for what's next in nuclear, I think I would just make a comment. I think that's something you all need to be thinking about, because Virginia has both the resources in industry, academia, and in the research and development space to lead in that area. And if we don't start thinking about how we get new nuclear into the mix, in addition to extending the life of what we already have, these goals become more and more difficult, especially if you want to get to something where you talk about carbon-free. So I think it's great to add efficiency, renewables, all that is great, and I think nuclear fits into that mix very, very well. And so I would just encourage that to be more a part of the dialogue, and I think we had some good conversations with how we're going to talk more about how we can help facilitate that as the consortium. So anyway, I just encourage you to keep that in mind, because I think it's really important.
I understand. As I understand it, clean nuclear power is almost 30% of the state's energy portfolio right now. It is significant. And this is not meant to pass the buck at all, but of course my secretariat, the Secretariat of Natural Resources purview is permitting, is carbon reduction in terms of, you met with Secretary Ball, you met with the right person in terms of, lead in drafting the energy plan and figuring out sort of where we should be getting energy from cleaner sources. I won't claim to be an expert in sort of all the politics, the financials or otherwise regarding nuclear. From my perspective, anything that doesn't emit carbon is good, but I understand there are many other facets sort of that need to be considered, but point taken.
So anyway, I would just look at us, please, as a resource. We're going to be working over the next 6 months or so to help try to bring more of this dialogue to the forefront. Because having that discussion of not only the importance of it, but how does the Commonwealth find a path forward, I think that's something we really want to focus on, because I think it's important.
And I don't want to set expectations that I can't live up to, because again, this is not in my secretariat, but I will just say this. Achieving this goal, achieving this carbon reduction goal, as I said before, is a top priority of the Northam administration. And if this group, if the nuclear energy industry believes they have ideas that provide a pathway, by all means, share those ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it.
Definitely.
Y'all gonna let me off easy? All right.
Sorry, I have one more. What's the, so there's the regulatory side, which you kind of addressed, and I know there's some uncertainties there. Has there been more thought given to the incentives side for developing new sources? I know there's some initiatives in place, but can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I suppose, to the extent I know about incentives, they are primarily not for nuclear.
Sure.
Right? So I think incentivizing offshore and onshore, or part of offshore and onshore wind and solar, of course, is part of the plan. What the governor intends to do in his next budget and such, I frankly don't know yet. So we'll have to update you on that as we get closer to session. I think this being his sort of true first biennial coming up, and his commitment to increase conservation spending, which I consider this to be, to 2% of the state's budget, I think sort of gives us a lot of opportunities. And again, should you have ideas or things like that, you should be talking to my secretary and of course to Secretary Ball and Deputy Secretary Navarro, and Will.
And to your point earlier, I would just mention, probably this time next year we'll be in the middle likely in the middle of the update to the energy plan. And so encouraging this authority and individual members and BNEC to be engaged really will be good.
Well, so I guess that's the part that's a bit disappointing, because we did get engaged during the plan that was just adopted, and the absence of discussion of nuclear is quite obvious. So the comment, and it's it's nothing new and it's nothing personal, but the comment that says, well, of course we're incentivizing wind and solar because that has become the standard political track, because who's opposed to that, right? But the point is that every study that has been done about decarbonizing the economy says that it is not possible to take the carbon out of the power generation market by simply going to intermittent power sources. You need something that is baseload, and that baseload, the only technology that we know of today that is able to do that is nuclear. So for a plan to basically say we have all of these very, very admirable goals to be able to take carbon out, and yet refuse to even recognize what the only option to get there is, seems a bit, politically naive, I guess, is the word. So I think, obviously we will continue to engage, but the thing is we have to start looking at this realistically. If we're serious about decarbonizing, then we can't just pretend that we are. We have to be serious, we have to do what's necessary. We can't just take the politically easy way out.
And I'll add on to just to say is that means we have to have nuclear in that conversation. And as Tom alluded to, we hope to have more of these conversations in the future. And I totally appreciate you coming here today. But when you're having these conversations, as Tom said, we are a resource. So please bring us into these conversations, because we did try on the energy plan, and Will, you had to hear us about it, and we were disappointed that nuclear was not included for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons is that I'm the executive director of BNEC, the Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium. This authority, we were put together by legislation, so the state and the legislature felt that this was important enough. So we just feel that we want to maintain that and respect that as well.
If I could give an unsolicited piece of advice, I'm sure many of your groups have a lot of technical expertise, have report writers and things. Show us the math. Give us a report that shows how this helps get to the goal. I'm not saying that it will, that will result in any specific policy recommendation, but at least for me, for some of my colleagues, I think we're always willing to learn what we don't know. And I think that notionally, I hear you all. Seeing the numbers is helpful.
Yeah, appreciate that. That's good. We can do that.
Yes.
So, a more technical question.
Sure.
So, California gets about 15% of its power from solar, and in the middle of the summer, at midday, the things are pumping out like mad. California actually has to pay somebody to take the electricity because they can't handle the peak load. And they can't afford to ramp up the other power sources fast enough so that they can actually do that. So I would hope that you would be asking yourself, if you have these intermittent loads, what's the plan? Because you have a perfect example of a state which has really pushed hard on solar, but somehow never managed how do you capture it, how do you use it, how do you integrate it into the mix. I think you need to be working on that. And it's a difficult technical problem.
I think that's more than fair. I know this is the worst answer government can give, but I need to defer to my colleagues at DMME and the Secretary of Commerce and Trade, who are the experts in that topic area. But between me and you, I think they should do it. Look into it.
I'd say it's something where somehow just pushing ahead without having a plan that gets you all of that integrated. Basically, it means it's just not, it's going to get less and less effective the more you put in.
Sure. If I can comment, I think what I'm hearing thematically here is in the politics today of climate change and carbon reduction and things, there is certainly a lot of debate, discussion, noise, right? And I think y'all as technical experts are able to see some things that don't get addressed in some of those debates, or get left out intentionally even at times. I understand that, and all I can say that is know that the people who I work with in the governor's office do understand that dichotomy exists, and we do want to try to parse these things, and we do want to do this right, and we appreciate these kinds of inputs, and you should keep on sending them to us, because we do, they're not necessarily the things that you hear about in big town meetings, but they're things that we have to get right and we do think about, so I do appreciate that.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you, and we'll stay in touch.